Put that cookie down!
Would you be willing to trace all additions?
Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. Merry Christmas to all you guys out there, and for those who don't celebrate Christmas, happy holidays. It is the week of Christmas, and I wanted to talk about one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time, and that is Jingle All The Way.
Now, it's two fathers.
This is war.
One mission. Oh, poor baby. And every man for himself.
So Jingle All The Way is directed by Brian Levant, and if you guys have not seen the film, basically the story centers around this dad named Howard, who's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he is on the hunt to try and find this Turbo Man doll. The only problem is that it's Christmas Eve, and this doll is sold out everywhere, so on the way, Christmas hijinks ensue. So yeah, man, guys, I love Jingle All The Way. It's a movie that, I grew up watching and, just like with my family and stuff like that. So it kind of has that, that nostalgic like feel to me. So that's part of the reason why I love it. I also have family that's actually lives out in the Midwest. And so I've been to the Mall of America a number of times where parts of this film were actually filmed. So that, that's kind of cool growing up and realizing it. Looking back on it. And man, guys, I just can't imagine, that mall being there on like Black Friday or just the holiday season in general. It must be pure chaos, and probably more so back in the day, like, when this took place, like the 96, I believe it was. Like now I'm sure it's still busy, but yeah, back then I'm sure it was just like an absolute nut house. But anyways, guys, yeah, I just wanted to talk about the film, so without further ado, let's go ahead. So the movie opens up and, we get introduced to Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, Howard, right away. He's, at his job and he's talking to all these like different customers. It's the day before Christmas Eve, and his secretary is telling him, it's like, hey, you're going to be late for your son's karate class. You got to go. And you just see Arnold going through and he keeps repeating the line, and don't forget, you're my favorite customer. Sorry for the terrible Arnold impersonation. But, he's telling everyone that. He finally gets, like, his wife, like, comes on the line. It's like, hey, you coming to the karate class? And he ends by saying, and don't forget, you're my favorite customer. I just thought that was funny, just to start things off. Sure enough, he ends up missing it. He gets there right after the class ends. And, his son's pretty mad at him because he's missed like several of these at this point. So, he's trying to do anything he can to cheer him up, to try and make it up to him. So he's talking to him and he's just like, hey, maybe there's something special I can do for you to, to make it up to you. Is there a certain toy that you're looking for Christmas? And Jamie ends up telling him that he's like, yeah, it's Turbo Man. Everyone's going to have this doll. If I don't get this doll, like, I'll be a loser. But he like told him that. He's like, I already told Santa, so you don't have to worry about that. So at that point, afterwards, he's getting ready to go to bed, and he's talking to his wife, and he's just like, oh yeah, we really bonded. And, he was talking about the Turbo Man doll. And then she's like, yeah, you got the doll, right? And you just see like the look of sheer terror on Arnold's face. Everyone's face went just like, oh shit, I completely forgot to do that. And, at this point now, like Turbo Man's sold out everywhere. So at that point, it's just like craziness ensues from there. So the day after, he wakes up, it's Christmas Eve, and, he tells his wife, he's like, oh, I left the doll at the office, so I have to go and get it and bring it back here without, letting Jamie know. And he's like, oh, you're going to miss the parade, like, you can't leave. And he tells him, he's going to be right back. He just has to go get something at work or whatever. And from there, he goes on this adventure of trying to find, like, a Turbo Man doll. He ends up, running all over the city. First store he goes to, he actually ends up running into one of the other main characters of the movie, played by Sinbad. And he's this like post-off worker, and they're waiting in line to get into the store, and it's one of those things where the guy's like, oh, we don't open till 9 o'clock. And I have definitely been in that situation where I've been waiting to get like a certain item or whatever, and you get there and it's like, most of the times, they will not open the store until it's exactly, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever time they open. So I can totally feel their pain as far as like that goes. And he's talking to him before like the store opens up, and they kind of bond a little bit, even though Sinbad is definitely a little eccentric to say the least. But it's pretty funny. And then the store opens up. one of the guys like in the front, he gets trampled, and eventually they go in the store. They're looking for Turbo Man everywhere, and they can't find him because he's sold out. So they go up to one of the clerks, and they're just like, hey, like, do you guys have any Turbo Man dolls? And the one guy, he starts laughing, and then he goes up and gets his friend, and he's like, yeah, can you just, what was it you were looking for? And he was like, we're looking for some Turbo Man dolls. And they just both start laughing. And, you've seen that, like, scene in, like, other movies, I feel like, before, that particular kind of instance, or, like, Christmas specials. But it's funny, because then Arnold grabs these two guys and just picks them up, and they're just like, oh shit. And basically from there, they start smiling and laughing, and he's like, there we go, there's your Christmas spirit. And then they tell him that, like, one just like left the store recently, and so him and Sinbad trips them, and they're like running throughout the store trying to go after this lady who has this doll. And that just kind of begins the craziness of those two throughout the rest of the movie, trying to one up each other, trying to get these Turbo Man dolls, which is hilarious. So probably like one of my favorite things about this movie is that it just tackles the idea of shopping during the holiday season and how crazy that can be, especially when you're going after an item that is super elusive. For example, like with the Turbo Man doll. I've definitely been in that position where I've been shopping, going after something in particular, and I just remember like having to like wait in lines. I know like one example, which I believe it was definitely, I don't know if it was December. It was around maybe like Black Friday or something like that. But I remember like when the classic NES first came out, and that thing was super hard to get. I remember waiting in line, I believe it was at like Best Buy, for like a couple hours. And it was freezing outside. Like I even stood I was in my car, but then people started lining up. So it's like, okay, I got to go outside because everyone else is going outside. So it's one of those weird things, like, it's completely ridiculous, but in a weird way, it's kind of fun. So like, I know I'm totally caught up in the consumerism of things, but it's fun, just driving to these places, waiting in the lines, trying to get these elusive items. And then when you finally get them, it's just like this adrenaline rush. So I just really love that whole aspect of the film. And I feel like it's like one of those, especially for a holiday, like a Christmas movie, it's one of those movies that really dives deep into that, because you don't see that really too often. And it just kind of, how much America is really, obsessed with this whole idea of just like shopping and getting, the gift that you really want, or for someone else, and to what extent we'll go to get that.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sinbad.
I work for the post office and I'm unstable. Tell him.
This man is totally insane.
Thank you.
Christmas comes but once a year.
Without going through like the whole entire movie, guys, a couple of the scenes that I really, really like is in one particular scene, they end up going to the Mall of America because they get notified by this like random guy walking by that there is a last minute shipment of like Turbo Man dolls. So him and Sinbad, they fly to like the Mall of America, and they end up going to this one store. And sure enough, there's like a huge crowd, waiting for, the announcement of like when they're going to be putting out like the Turbo Man dolls. And the store is kind of trying to do a reasonable thing by doing like a lottery system. The guy handling it's kind of a dick, but they're trying to do a lottery system. And basically they're going to hand out these like plastic balls. And if you get like a certain color, I believe you'll get like a Turbo Man doll. And there's just way too many people, as it always happens with like the holidays and stuff like that. So the employees, they just take the balls and throw them up in the air. They start scattering everywhere. Arnold ends up getting like one or two or whatever, and then Sinbad, he takes like pepper spray, sprays him in the face. He's like on the ground, and then the Sinbad, he gets one of the balls and he's like, dancing in front of like Arnold or whatever. And then Arnold just looks at him and he's like, he got two! And then all these guys, they tackle the postman. And that scene's hilarious. And then right from there, you end up seeing one of the balls, it starts bouncing away and it lands in like this little girl's, her stroller, and she picks it up. Arnold sees her, and he starts chasing after this little girl, which eventually goes downstairs, and he chases her into like this playhouse and this like ball pit, which if you were watching this, you'd be like, what the hell is going on right now? But yeah, he ends up chasing the girl, and he goes to grab the girl's mouth and, get the ball because he needs this to get the Turbo Man. And these moms come over and they start slapping him with, with different things and hitting him. And they're like, oh, you pervert and stuff like that. And Arnold, he gets out and he's like, I'm not a pervert. I just wanted a Turbo Man doll. And yeah, so that's like one of my favorite scenes like in the film. Shortly after that, Arnold Howard, he ends up going to this factory with all these really sketchy Santas. And the reason he goes there is because he met one of them like in the mall, and they were saying like, oh, we have a Turbo Man doll, so like if you want it, come with us. So he goes back to this factory. It's really, really sketchy, and you see like all these people in there, and basically they're making toys and like charging like twice the price to make a profit. So they're really, really sketchy guys. And Arnold, he gets the Turbo Man doll, unwraps it, sees that it's broken, and he's like, what the fuck? And from there, he's like, you guys are con men or whatever, and he gets into a fight with all these different Santas. And one of my favorites is that he ends up fighting the Big Show dressed as Santa Claus. And that's just like so ridiculous. It's funny because like you look back at the 90s, and, the Big Show, he had several different appearances in all these different comedies, which is funny because, like, I don't think he really does a lot of, like, acting anymore. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he had, like, a couple of them. It was, like, like The Waterboy, Jingle All The Way, and there was, like, one or two other ones that I'm just, like, not thinking of now. But, yeah, that scene with him fighting Arnold is fantastic. Another thing that I want to talk about, I have to talk about with this film, is that there's another character. He is the neighbor to Howard, and his name's Ted, and he's played by the late Phil Hartman. And he's just this super, super, creepy guy. He's a divorced dad, and, all these, like, other, like, women, they're all like, oh, like, you should come over to my house and fix this for me because you're such a handyman and all that stuff. And it's really kind of cheesy and ridiculous. But basically, he is always just constantly, like, hitting on Howard's wife. So he can't stand the guy with, for good reason. And just like throughout the film, he does all these like ridiculous things. And if you guys, I'm sure if you've seen this movie as many times as I have, you recognize, my quote from the beginning. At one point he calls and Ted, he's inside the house and he's baking cookies inside this guy's house. And he's just like, oh, your wife's cookies are so good. And put that cookie down. So that's one of the classic lines of the film. But yeah, that guy just like, yeah, I don't blame Arnold at all for being pissed at this guy like trying to hit on your wife. Totally understandable. But yeah, basically, the film from there, it wraps up at the parade, as I kind of mentioned earlier, and Arnold accidentally ends up becoming Turbo Man. He gets fitted because he goes into like some alleyway and they think he's the guy for Turbo Man. And he ends up fighting Dementor, which is Turbo Man's like arch rival, and he's played by Sinbad. And so they kind of face off, just like one more time, and they're just going back and forth. And because there's a special edition like Turbo Man, and so Sinbad's chasing like Jamie, and like then Arnold ends up going after him and like flying up with these jetpacks, and that whole sequence with him like flying through the air, going through like a building, like bursting in like on a family and hitting like the wall and stuff like that. It's super like cheesy, like obviously like now. But I love it. It's freaking fantastic. So I laugh so hard. Like this whole movie, to me, I have a blast with it. It's funny because my fiance, she's not as big a fan of the movie. She's like, yeah, it's really not that great. And I gave her a hard time like recently. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Jingle All The Way is amazing. But I know, it's by no means like a perfect movie. But it's just something, as far as fun goes, I watch this film every single holiday season and I never get tired of it. So yeah, it's far from perfect, but it's a lot of fun. So like I said, guys, it's one of my favorite holiday movies to watch every year. It's a lot of cheesy, fun, and like I said, it tackles that whole aspect of just like the craziness of the holiday season and shopping, and what that really looks like and what some of us will do to get presents for some of the people that we love. So, I loved looking at that, and just, Arnold, he's just a really likable character. Sinbad too, even though he's kind of, he's trying to mess up, Arnold and in getting the Turbo Man like before him. They're both, likable characters. And there's some stuff in there now. It's like watching the movie, it's like, there's probably no way this movie would have been made now with like some of the stuff that happens in the film, some of the jokes and things like that. So as far as a rating goes, man, and like I said, it by no means is it perfect, but as far as just fun, I have to give this movie like a 9 out of a 10. It's a personal classic for me. And I know, like on the, I think like Rotten Tomatoes, it's like a 17% or something like that. But it's one of those instances where I just like completely disagree with the rating system. I had so much fun. I know a lot of my friends really actually like this movie as well. So it's definitely, it's a 9 out of 10 for me. But I want to hear, what you guys think. Do you like Jingle All The Way, or do you think it's kind of dumb? Let me know down below in the comments. And what's your guys' favorite Christmas movie of all time? Let me know. I definitely want to hear. And if you guys are new to the channel, please, again, hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it, just so that way you get notifications for all my new videos. Make sure to hit thumbs up on this video as well, just to support it. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. I appreciate it a lot. And again, guys, I just want to wish all you guys a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday. And if you don't, celebrate Christmas, I just hope you have a happy holiday season. Enjoy some time with your family. And I will talk to you guys soon. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.